Hello students. Okay, today we'll discuss about the urinary system. Okay, if you see this urinary system, okay, see this is one of the system. You all know that. Okay, and it's mainly composed of a pair of kidneys and the urinary tract. Okay, see mainly in the urinary system, which is having a pair of kidneys, and next, okay, you are having the urinary tract. Okay, see, first of all, if you see these kidneys, okay, what is the main functioning of these kidneys? These are going to be filter the blood, okay, to remove the metabolic waste, okay, and then it is going to be modifying whatever the liquid that are going to be remains, okay, which will be allowing these organs to maintaining the fluid or electrolyte or acid balance, and sometimes the blood pressure maintenance also this will be useful. Okay, see, and this process of urine formation, okay, a fluid, okay, what's meant by this urine? It's a fluid that consisting of water, electrolytes, and also the metabolic waste. Okay, finally with the help of these kidneys, okay, the urine is going to be formed. Okay, urine which is consisting of the water, electrolytes, and the metabolic waste, right? And next, coming to this urinary tract, see, other than the kidneys, okay, whatever the ureters, okay, the urinary bladder and the urethra, if you see the those three together, you will call it as an urinary tract. Okay, see this urinary tract which can transport, which can store, and which can eliminate the urine from the body, that you will call it as a urinary tract. Okay, and simply if you see here, I told you a pair of kidneys, and next one is urinary tract. Okay, the urinary tract includes a pair of ureters, bladder, and the urethra. Okay, these three together you will call it as a urinary tract, right? Next, see here I told you that is tract composed of the ureters, urinary bladder, and the urethra. Okay, generally if you see that urine, whatever the urine that is going to be formed in the kidneys, okay, see that is going to be leaves the kidney through the ureters, and next one is which will be entering into the urinary bladder, right? See, from the kidneys, whatever the urine that is going to be formed, which will be enters into the ureters, and finally which will be enters into the urinary bladder. Okay, next coming to this bladder, which is storing the urine, okay, which is generally present in the floor of the pelvic cavity. Clear? See, whatever the urine that is going to be stored in this urinary bladder, which is going to be expelled from the body, okay, through the tube called it as the urethra, okay, which is going to be connecting the urinary bladder with the outside of the body, right? See, finally whatever the urine that is going to be collected, that are stored in the urinary bladder, once the urinary bladder is completely full, and whatever the urine that is going to be present, okay, which is going to be expelled out mainly through this urethra, right? And generally if you will see what are the different functions of this urinary system, okay, it performs the different functions. First one is the removal of metabolic wastes. Okay, that means the kidneys that are going to be filtering the blood, and which will be removing the metabolic waste. See, that means these wastes are going to be eliminated from the body via the urine. See, that means whatever the metabolic wastes that are going to be present inside our body, definitely that waste is going to be removed from the body mainly through the urine. Okay, that's the main important function of this urinary system. Okay, that is the removal of the metabolic wastes. Next one is the regulation of fluid and the electrolyte balance, right? And the kidneys, which can also regulates the fluids, okay, that is mainly the blood solute concentration by either conserving or by eliminating the water. Okay, not only the water, by conserving some electrolytes or by eliminating some electrolytes, okay, like sodium, potassium, and the calcium ions. This is going to be regulating the electrolyte balance. The next one is the regulation of acid base balance. Okay, the kidneys, which can also regulate the acid base balance mainly by the blood pH. Okay, see that means either which can conserve or which can eliminate the hydrogen ions and the bicarbonate ions, right? See, by conserving and by eliminating these kind of ions, which is going to be regulating the acid base balance, right? And next one is the maintenance of blood pressure. See, these kidneys which can also regulate the blood pressure, see, by controlling the blood volume. See, not only by controlling the blood volume, which is going to be maintaining the blood pressure, which can also, okay, secreting some enzymes that's going to influence both the blood volume and the peripheral resistance. Clear? See, by these things also, which is going to be maintaining the blood pressure. And next one is regulation of erythropoiesis. You all know that erythropoiesis is the formation of red blood cells mainly in the bone marrow. See, that means here the kidneys which can also regulate this erythropoiesis by releasing one hormone, that is erythropoietin. Next one is performing other metabolic functions, okay, which can also plays a very important role, which includes, that is detoxifying the substances in the blood. See, that means if any toxic substances that is going to be entered into the blood, okay, which is making into detoxification. And next one is which can also causes the activation of vitamin D and making the new glucose through the process of gluconeogenesis. Okay, these are all some functions which will be related to this urinary system. Okay, we'll discuss about these kidneys. Okay, the importance of kidneys. Okay, first we'll see about the anatomy of the kidneys. Here we can discuss about the external structures of the kidneys and the internal structures of the kidneys. Okay, first we'll see about the external anatomy. If you see these kidneys, I told you one pair of kidneys are held in place on the posterior body wall and protected by mainly three external layers of the connective tissue. Clear? Total, if you see the kidneys, this is going to be externally protected by three layers of the connective tissue. Okay, what are the three layers? That is renal fascia, adipose capsule, and the renal capsule. Okay, see these three layers that are going to be totally protecting the kidneys. Okay, the renal fascia, which is an outermost layer, and the middle layer that is very thick, that is, you will call it as adipose capsule. And next one is the renal capsule, okay, which is extremely thin layer, and it is going to be protecting the kidney from the infections and the physical traumas, right? See, these are the three layers or the three external structures that is going to be protecting the kidneys. Okay, if you see here, this is one layer, this is, you will call it as renal fascia, and here see the middle, the thickest part, okay, this you will call it as a, that is adipose capsule. And here this layer which will be covering the inner layer, this you will call it as a renal capsule. Okay, these are the three layers. And next, coming to the internal anatomy of the kidneys. And if you see one kidney, that is the frontal section of the kidney, that is going to be divided into three regions of this organ, that is outermost renal cortex, the middle one you will call it as renal medulla, and the inner one you will call it as renal pelvis. Okay, the cortex and the renal medulla, if you see combinedly, the renal cortex and the renal medulla, which is going to be make up the urine forming portion of the kidneys. Okay, see, if you see this okay diagram here, this is the cortex. Okay, this part is known as the cortex. See, wherever these pyramids will be present, okay, this part you will call it as renal pyramids, or you will also call it as medullary pyramids. Why? Because this area is the medulla, and next one is the remaining, this part you will call it as a pelvis, right? See, these are the three distinct regions of this frontal section of the kidneys, that is outermost cortex, the middle, that is medulla, and the inner pelvis. Here if you see the cortex, which is reddish brown in color, see the reason behind this reddish brown in color is because of its rich in blood supply. Okay, see that means which is having around 90 to 95% of the kidneys blood vessels. See that means most of the blood vessels that are going whatever the blood vessels that are present in the kidneys, around 90 to 95% that are going to be present only in the cortex. So that's why it says reddish brown in color. Okay, at the specific points, the extensions of this renal cortex, he will call it as renal columns. Okay, see these renal columns that are going to be passes through the renal medulla towards the renal pelvis, right? See here, see this is the renal columns. See that means if you see this is the cortex, here this is the extension of this cortex, right? See here the extension of the cortex, this we will call it as a renal columns. Okay, see the renal columns which is also having the blood vessels. See, within the renal medulla, we are having the cone-shaped renal pyramids. You will also call it as medullary pyramids. I already shown you the pyramids, okay, which are separated from each other by a renal column on each side, right? And the renal pyramids are darker in color and appear striped, okay, reflecting that they are made up of parallel bundles of small tubes with fewer blood vessels than in the renal cortex. I already told you the cortex is very rich in the blood supply, but which is not in case of this, that is medullary pyramids, or in case of the medulla, okay, which is having very less amount of the blood vessels when compared to the renal cortex. Okay, this renal cortex and the renal medulla of each kidney contains over a million of microscopic filtering structures known as nephrons. Okay, this you all know that it's a functional units of the kidneys. Okay, mainly the nephrons which is going to be present only in the renal cortex and the medulla, but not in case of the pelvis. Okay, the tip of each renal pyramids, okay, which is tapers, which is very sharp into a slender papillae, okay, which borders on the first urine draining structures, a cup shaped tube known as a minor calyx. Okay, see that means here in case of kidneys we are having minor calyx and the major calyx. Okay, and urine from 3 to 4 minor calyx drains into a major calyx. Okay, see 2 to 3 major calyces in turn drain urine into a large collecting chamber, that is the renal pelvis, which is finally enters into the ureters. Clear? See, generally if you see a cup-shaped tube-like structure that is going to be draining the urine from the renal pyramids, that you will call it as a minor calyx. Clear? Here 3 to 4 minor calyces that are going to be drained into a larger major calyx. Okay, see all these major calyxes that is going to be draining the urine, and finally which will be enters into the renal pelvis and which will be leading to the ureters. Okay, here generally if you see the smooth muscle tissue, okay, in the walls of these calyces and the renal pelvis contracts to help the propel urine towards the ureters. See how the urine that is going to be entering into the ureters, see because of these contractions of this renal pelvis, okay, which is made up of mainly the smooth muscle tissue. Okay, whenever the smooth muscle tissue are undergoing the contractions in this renal pelvis, so that whatever the urine that are going to be present here, that is going to be propelled towards the ureters. Okay, see that means both the calces and the renal pelvis that is going to be resides into the renal sinus. Okay, if you see this is the internal anatomy of the kidneys. And next we'll see about the nephron. I told you the functional unit of the kidneys is the nephron. So we have to discuss something about this nephron also. Okay, which is having two main divisions, that is renal corpuscles and the renal tubules. Okay, the renal corpuscles is responsible for filtering the blood. Okay, each globe-shaped renal corpuscles consisting of two parts. Okay, whatever the renal corpuscles, okay, that consisting of two parts, okay, that is glomerulus, okay, and an outer sheath of epithelial tissue known as Bowman's capsule, okay, which is consisting of glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. The glomerulus, which is a group of blood capillaries, these capillaries called fenestrated because of the large pores or the fenestrations. Okay, these kind of blood vessels which is having very large pores, so that the blood is going to be filtered through this glomerulus. Clear? See, but the larger molecules like the proteins which cannot be filtered through these capillaries. Even though the pores are very large, the protein structures cannot be filtered through these kind of blood capillaries. Okay, and if you see surrounding this glomerulus is a double layered glomerular capsule which consisting of the outer parietal layer and the inner visceral layers. Okay, this parietal layer is a globe-like extension of the renal tubule and which is made up of the simple squamous epithelium. And next one is, which I told you, the inner visceral layer, okay, which is mainly consisting of modified epithelial cells known as podocytes that's going to be wrapped around these glomerular capillaries. Okay, and whatever the extensions, okay, that is from each podocyte are known as food processes or the pedicels. Okay, between the parietal and the visceral layers, okay, you are having a halo region that you will call it as capsular space, okay, which is continuous with the beginning of the renal tubule lumen. Next, okay, until now we had seen about the corpuscle. Okay, the corpuscles, okay, I told you, which is having the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. Okay, these two together you will call it as a corpuscles. And next one is the renal tubule. Okay, which tubule which is having the three regions, the proximal tubule, okay, the nephron loop, or you will also call it as a loop of Henle, and the distal tubule. Okay, each of which differs in structure and the functions. Okay, if you see these three different kinds of regions, definitely they are going to be differ in structure and function. Okay, first one is the proximal tubule. Okay, the initial and the longest segment of the renal tubule through which the filtrate flows in the proximal tubule. Okay, if you see among the three different segments, the first one is its initial and the longest segment. Okay, it consisting of mainly the simple cuboidal epithelial cells and also having the microvilli. Okay, this is having the, okay, if you see this proximal tubule which is having both convoluted and the straight sections. Okay, see, generally if you see convoluted means which is like a coiled or string like structures. Okay, this proximal tubule, this is the tubule which is having both the straight sections as well as the coiled sections. Okay, the many microvilli, okay, that is going to be projecting into the lumen of this tubule forms a brush border, so named because the fine projections resemble the bristles on a brush. Okay, this border greatly increases the surface area. See, as this microvilli that is going to be project. Okay, it's going to be projecting like a, okay, brush. Okay, this is going to be increasing the surface area. Okay, next one is the loop of Henle. Okay, from the proximal tubule, whatever the filtrate that is going to be present, that's going to be entering into this loop of Henle. Okay, the remaining filtrate, okay, that's going to be flows into this loop of Henle. Okay, you will also call it as a nephron loop. Okay, which is only part of the renal tubule that dips into the renal medulla. Clear? See, I already told you only the cortex and the medulla which will be responsible for the urine formation, and this is the only segment in case of the nephron, that is loop of Henle, that is going to be present in the renal medulla. Okay, next one is, if you see, it is having two limbs, that is the descending limb and the ascending limb. Clear. If you see this descending limb that travels towards the renal medulla, turns 180 degrees and becomes the ascending limb, okay, which climbs back towards the renal cortex. Clear. Here you remember this loop of Henle, which is having descending limb and the ascending limb. Okay, this descending limb travels towards the medulla, okay, which is going to be turns 180 degrees and becomes the ascending limb. Okay, this which is climbs back towards the renal cortex. Okay, this descending limb is composed of mainly the simple squamous epithelium. Okay, see, and thus is often called as a thin descending limb. Okay, thin limb of loop of Henle, will call it as a descending limb. Okay, but in some neurons, if you see this thin segment also forms the bend regions and a part of the ascending limb. So there is also a thin ascending loop will also be present. But generally, if you see the descending limb is, you will call it as thin loop of Henle, and the ascending limb, you will call it as a thick loop of Henle. Why? Because which is having the cuboidal epithelium. Okay, the reason behind that, if this very thin, that is descending limb, is because of simple squamous epithelium. Why the ascending limb, you will call it as a thick loop of Henle? Because which is made up of the cuboidal epithelium. Okay, next the third one is the distal tubule. Okay, the final segment through which the filtrate that's going to be passes in the renal tubule is the distal tubule. Okay, like the proximal tubule, the distal tubule is also composed of the simple cuboidal epithelium. However, this distal tubule, which doesn't have any microbial life, which is present in case of the proximal tubule. Okay, see, that's all about the anatomy. And next we'll see the formation of urine, how the urine that is going to be formed in the kidneys. Okay, see, whatever the waste that are going to be present inside our body is excreted mainly from the human body, mainly through the form of urine. Clear? See, other than this, okay, we are having different minor routes of excretion, but this, okay, the urine through which whatever the waste that is going to be excreted, which is acting like a major route by which most of the waste that are going to be excreted through the urine. Okay, here our kidneys plays a very important role in this process of excretion here. And here if you see the normal human urine, which is going to be includes about 95% of water and 5% of the solid waste. Generally, if the urine that is going to be formed, that urine, if you see the composition, having 95% of water and 5% of the solid waste, right? See, it is produced in the nephron, okay, which is a structural and functional unit of the kidneys. And if you see this urine formation, mainly okay, carried out mainly three phases, that is glomerular filtration, reabsorption, and the tubular secretions. Okay, by these three phases, finally the urine is going to be formed through the nephrons. Okay, first we'll discuss about the glomerular filtration. Here this glomerular filtrations occurs in the glomerulus. Okay, I told you already, here in the glomerulus where the blood is going to be filtered. Okay, this process occurs through three layers. Okay, that is epithelium of Bowman's capsule, endothelium of glomerular blood vessels, and the membrane between these two layers. Okay, through which finally the blood that is going to be filtered, okay, that's going to be entered into the proximal convoluted tubule, right? See here, whatever the blood that is going to be filtered, okay, which is going to be reaches the Bowman's capsule. See, I told you the larger molecules like proteins which cannot be filtered through this Bowman's capsule, right? See, therefore, this process is known as ultrafiltration. See, even though the pores are very large in case of the capillaries, here in case of glomerulus, but some large proteins, okay, the proteins generally which cannot be filtered, so this process we will also call it as a ultrafiltration. Okay, see, mainly this filtration rate is going to be regulated by two mechanisms, that is auto-regulation and the sympathetic control. Okay, by these two mechanisms, see, this filtration rate is going to be regulated. Okay, next one is the tubular reabsorption. Here occurs both in passive and active process. See, mainly the glucose, amino acids, and other ions, okay, that are going to be transported out of the filtrate into the peritubular capillaries. Okay, that is about 65% of the filtrate is going to be reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. Clear? See here, you remember through the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule, whatever the blood that is going to be filtered, it is going to be enters into the proximal convoluted tubule, right? See, in the proximal convoluted tubule, whatever the filtrate, okay, that is having like glucose or amino acids or the important ions, okay, like sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, bicarbonates. Okay, these are all important to our body, right? See, if the filtrate is having these kind of molecules, okay, again, these molecules are reabsorbed back into the blood circulation. See, that is into the peritubular capillaries. Okay, see, that process is known as tubular reabsorption. See, that means whatever the molecules that are present in the filtrate, which is going to be reabsorbed back into the blood capillaries. See, that means here around 65% of the filtrate is going to be reabsorbed back into the blood circulation in the proximal convoluted tubule. Clear? See, generally all these substances, okay, whatever the substances I have mentioned here, all are going to be reabsorbed. See, because of that, the blood will become hypertonic. Clear? Next one is the reabsorption in the distal convoluted tubule is under hormonal control. Okay, that is aldosterone causes more salt to be absorbed. Okay, ADH causes more water to be absorbed. Clear? See, that means if you see aldosterone, okay, I told you this in case of distal convoluted tubule, totally this reabsorption depends upon the hormones. Okay, see, that means aldosterone causes salt to be absorbed, and that is ADH that's going to be causes more water to be absorbed. Next one is the secretions. And finally, if you see, the next step is the urine formation is the tubular secretion. Okay, here the tubular cells. See, that means in the tubules, whatever the cells that are going to be present, that is going to be secreting some substances like hydrogen ions, potassium ions, etc. into the filtrate. Clear? See, suppose these tubular cells that are going to be secreting these kind of ions that can be eliminated out through the urine. Okay, that means this process is known as secretions. Clear? See, that means by this process, inside our body, the ionic balance, acid base balance, okay, is going to be maintained. Okay, whatever the secreted ions, okay, that are going to be present, definitely that is going to be combined with the filtrate and which is going to be forming the urine. Okay, see, finally, whatever the urine that is going to be formed, which is going to be passed out of the nephron tubules into the collecting duct. Clear? See, from the collecting duct, okay, the urine that is going to be enters into the pelvis and then which is going to be enters into the ureters. Okay, this is all about the formation of urine, and next we'll see about the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. Okay, this is one of the important thing. Okay, I hope we have learned this system in case of the cardiovascular system. Okay, this is very important system, that is renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. Okay, see, this is a very complex system. Okay, if you see, this is going to be maintains, that is blood pressure, which can also preserves the glomerular filtration rate as a secondary effect. But the primary effect of this renin-angiotensin aldosterone system is it's going to be maintaining the blood pressure inside our body. Clear? We'll see how it's going to be maintaining the blood pressure and what are the steps that are going to be involved in case of renin angiotensin aldosterone system. Okay, see, that means if you see, whenever the blood pressure is going to be decreases, see, that means whenever the blood flow to the glomerulus is going to be decreased. See, that means whenever the blood pressure is decreased, then automatically the blood flow is going to be decreased towards the glomerulus. Clear? See, because of this decreased blood pressure, which is going to be causing a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate. Clear? See, around these glomerulus, we are having one special type of cells. We will call it as JG cells. Okay, that JG cells, we will call it as juxtaglomerular cells that are going to be present around the glomerulus. Clear? See, whenever the blood pressure is going to be decreased, immediately these JG cells that are going to be releases the renin. Okay, see this decreased blood flow through the efferent arterioles triggers the JG cells to release the enzyme renin into the bloodstream. Okay, here you remember whenever the blood pressure decreases, okay, the blood flow is also decreases towards the glomerulus, right? Whenever the blood flow is going to be decreased, which is going to be stimulates the JG cells for the release of this enzyme known as renin, which is into the bloodstream, right? See, this renin converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, clear, until, okay, which is going to be inactive protein produced by the liver known as angiotensinogen. Clear. See, this renin is going to be catalyzes the conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Clear. See here what happens from the liver. Okay, this angiotensinogen is going to be released. See, this renin is going to be converts this angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. Okay, that's the third step. Next, fourth one is angiotensin converting enzyme. Okay, that is ACE, which is going to be converts angiotensin 1 to an active angiotensin 2. Here, angiotensin 1, okay, okay, through the blood until it can encounters an enzyme known as angiotensin converting enzyme, which is made up of the endothelial cells in the lungs. Okay, see, this AC converts angiotensin 1 to its active form, that is angiotensin 2. Okay, this is the one thing you remember. Here the fourth step is the angiotensin converting enzyme, which is going to be converts angiotensin 1 into the active angiotensin 2. Okay, next one is okay. See, once that angiotensin 2 that is going to be formed, okay, which is going to be promotes, that is vasoconstriction of efferent arterioles. Okay, not only that, okay, which can also promotes the vasoconstriction of the systemic blood vessels. Okay, that means there's angiotensin 2, which is a very potent or very powerful vasoconstrictor that is going to be formed in response to the low blood pressure or in response to the decreased blood flow towards the glomerulus. Clear? See, because of this angiotensin 2, which is going to be promotes the reabsorption of sodium and chloride ions from the proximal tubules, and because of that, which is can also reabsorb the water. Okay, see, because of that retention of salts, clear, what happens generally, the blood pressure is going to be increases. Clear. See how if the blood volume is increases, finally, which is going to be increases the blood pressure. See how this is going to be maintaining the blood pressure. I told you initially, if there is a blood pressure, that is going to be decreased. Clear. See, the blood flow is also decreased towards the glomerulus. See, finally, in this step, if you see, because of this angiotensin 2, what happens? There will be salt retention you are going to be observed. So, which is going to be increasing the blood volume, and finally, which is going to be increasing the blood pressure. Clear? See, this angiotensin 2 promotes the aldosterone release, leading to increased sodium and water retention. Okay, which see how which is going to be released, this angiotensin 2 stimulates adrenal glands to release the hormone aldosterone. Clear. See, once this aldosterone hormone is going to be released, which is acting on the distal tubules, okay, and which is going to be causing the reabsorption of the sodium ions from the filtrate in case of the distal convoluted tubules. Clear. See, because of that, which can also increases the blood pressure. See, and finally, which can also stimulates the thirst. Okay, that means another effect of this angiotensin 2, okay, which is going to be stimulate the thirst centers in the hypothalamus. This can increases the fluid intake, which could increases the blood volume. Once the blood volume is increased, the blood pressure is going to be automatically increased. Okay, and next coming to the clearance test, we'll also call it as a creatinine clearance test. Okay, this test is going to be measures how well the kidneys are going to be working and how well the blood is going to be flowing to the kidneys. Clear? See, already told you whenever the blood flow is going to be decreased towards the kidneys, okay, again there will be effect on the blood pressure, right? See, because of that, how well your kidneys are working and how well the blood is going to be flowing towards those kidneys. Okay, to know that, they have to perform this creatinine clearance test. Okay, see, generally if you see creatinine, which is a waste product that's going to be coming from the normal muscle use and from meat protein in your diet. Clear? See, from this you are getting this waste product of creatinine. Okay, see, generally if the kidneys are very healthy, which can remove the creatinine from the body, no doubt. It then passes out to your body through the urine. Definitely through urine, this creatinine is going to be passed out whenever the kidneys are functioning very well inside your bodies. So this creatinine is going to be removed as a waste through the urine. Okay, see, generally this creatinine clearance test usually compares the creatinine level in a 24 hours urine sample with the creatinine level in your blood. Okay, that means they are going to be comparing the creatinine levels in both the urine sample as well as in case of your blood samples. Okay, see, what is the need of this test? Okay, why we have to go for this kind of creatinine clearance test? Okay, when we have to go for this kind of test? See, that means if you are having any pain near the kidneys, so you can go for this kind of test. Or if there is a swelling or puffiness, especially around the eyes and the ankles. Okay, if there is a swelling or puffiness, okay, that's like a smooth sponge, like okay. Uh, Sensation around your eyes and around the ankles, you have to go for this kind of test. Next one is if you're having high blood pressure or low amount of urine or trouble urinating, or you're unable to go for the urination, or very low amount of urine that is going to be formed, or if you see dark or foamy urine that is going to be forming, or if there is a blood in the urine, or if there is any pain in the mid back. Okay, if you are having these kind of symptoms, definitely you have to go for this kind of creatinine clearance test. Okay, see, and if you see these results, how it's going to be present. Okay, this depends upon your age and the gender. Clear? Okay, if you see the normal range, that is 107 to 139 ml per minute, or 1.78 to 2.32 ml per seconds. Okay, for men. Okay, and if you see, it's different in case of women. Okay, if this kind of creatinine clearance rates, that's going to be goes down as the age is going to be increased. Clear? And in case of newborns, okay, if you see, it's around 40 to 65 ml per minute. And generally if you are having any abnormal creatinine clearance rate, that means definitely you are having some problem with your kidneys. That means they are going to unable to filtrate or unable to excrete the waste from the body. See, that means if the creatinine clearance values is very high than these normal values, which indicates there is having some problem with your kidneys, or it may somewhere else in your body is affecting the blood volume to the kidneys. Okay, see, this how we can justify with these values. It's having two reasons. The first thing is there is a problem with your kidneys, or somewhere inside your body you are having, so that the blood flow to the kidneys is going to be decreased. Okay, and if you are going for this procedure, okay, done with the samples of the blood and urine, I already told you we are comparing the blood and the urine creatinine wells. Okay, for the blood sample, a needle is used to draw the blood from a vein in your arm or the hand. Okay, and how the urine you are going to be collecting? 24-hour urine test. Okay, collect urine for 24 hours. Empty your bladder completely first thing in the morning. Okay, without collecting it. Note the time and then collect the urine every time. Okay, when you are going for the washroom over the next 24 hours. Okay, first time you have to empty the bladder and you have to note down the time. And next time, whenever you are going for the urination, you have to note down the time for the next 24 hours. Clear? And next one is the micturition. See, what is meant by the micturition? Clear? See here, that is excretion of urine. Okay, here whenever the volume of urine that are present in the bladder, which is going to be reaching to 50 ml, that means whenever the bladder capacity, if you see, it's to 50 ml. Once the bladder is full, okay, whatever the stretch receptors in the bladder that will be present, which is going to be stimulated and which is going to be excites the sensory parasympathetic nervous system, okay, which relays the information to the sacral area of the spine. Okay, this information is going to be integrated in the spine and relayed to two different set of neurons. Okay, the first one is the parasympathetic motor neurons that is going to be acting to contract these kind of detrusal muscles in the bladder. See, this urinary bladder mainly made up of these kind of muscles, that is detrusor muscles, so that the bladder pressure is going to be increases and the internal sphincter is going to be opens. Clear? Okay, the expulsion of urine from the body, this process is known as micturition. Clear? See, that means which is under some control, right? See, that means, and next one is at the same time, see, I already told you from the spine, which is going to be sending the information to the bladder by two neurons, that is parasympathetic motor neurons, and next one is the somatic motor neurons. Okay, the somatic motor neurons, which will be supplying the information to the external sphincter via the pudendal nerve. Okay, see, this nerve has to be inhibited, okay, which is going to be allowing the external sphincter to be open and the urine that is going to be flowed out assisted by some gravity. Okay, next one is the control of maturation. Here, the maturation that can be controlled, right? See, the children and adults have a considerable control over whenever they passes the urine. Okay, they can also increase or decreases the rate of flow and even stop and start again. So, maturation is clearly more than just a simple reflex. Clear? See, that means which is not that much complex. Okay, that means if you want to stop the flow of urine, you can stop, or if you want to start again, you can start. Okay, that means simply which is a simple reflex. Okay, this control is learned. Okay, this can be learned through the infancy and involves other sensory fibers in the bladder wall. Clear? So suppose if you see the newborns, okay, they doesn't learn this kind of maturation process, so they doesn't have any control. But once as the age is going to be increased, this control is going to be learned, right? See these fibers, okay, whatever the sensory fibers, okay, that are present in this urinary bladder wall that convey the information on the bladder fullness via the spine to the higher centers of the brain, the thalamus and the cerebral cortex. See, that means how you know that your bladder is full, because these kind of fibers, sensory fibers, which will be sending the information to the brain, that is mainly the thalamus and the cerebral cortex. Okay, see, this causes us to become aware that we need to pass the urine and to the urgency of the situation. Clear? See, from the brain, again, we are getting the information that means you have to pass the urine because your bladder is full. Okay, finally, after maturation, less than 10 ml. See, generally, what is the capacity of the urinary bladder? I told you 250 ml. See, after maturation, what happens? Only less than 10 ml of the urine that's going to be remain in the bladder, and again, the cycle is going to be repeats again, right? See, that's all, students, about the urinary system.